we're going to start off talking about John. So John George. I know a lot of you have followed this case with me since it began. John George is a 37-year-old man from Northern Ireland. Yeah, I've got his photo. I think John George is, he's got one of the best smiles that I've ever seen. Every photo you see of him, he's smiling. He's got a very, very nice smile. But anyway, so what happened with John George? Well, John, he is a bit of a rogue, definitely. He lost his way in life at some point. His parents say it's when he was sent to juvenile detention for, I can't think what his original crime was. I think it was fighting or whatever. So he's not an angel, and his family would be the first people to admit he's not an angel. He then got addicted to prescription drugs, apparently, while he was in prison. And that was when he was very young, and we're going to talk later about Preston Davies' mom. And she was very young when she married, but her crime was much more heinous than the crime John George committed. Anyway, got involved in drugs, as many people do. I mean, if you think it could never happen to your son or your daughter, it can, and sometimes it's a big surprise because you can't believe that your child, they're all babies like Preston at one point, aren't they? You don't think that they'll grow up to either be murderers like Jamie Varley, or to be, let's say, the apple, if you like Johnny got involved with drug running and things like that. So yeah, we're not saying an angel, but he still did not deserve what happened to him. He's a father of two boys. They've lost their father. So a couple of years ago, he came out ostensibly for a few days holiday, and he was supposed to be on a plane going home, and he never got on that plane. But there is some conjecture: did he even book that flight, or did somebody else book that flight to make it look like he was still alive? It's thought that he quite possibly might have already been deceased by then. So, that's what we're going to find out in the court case when it finally comes up. So his family will never forget Billy George's dad and his tearful pleas on camera, please give me my son back, knowing that his son was dead, pleading for his body to be returned. And his family came over here. So this was not last Christmas, it was the Christmas before. They spent all Christmas and New Year searching for their son's body, their loved one's body, in the wrong place, because they'd been given all the wrong information deliberately. They even brought a search team over from Northern Ireland, and they were looking in the wrong place. Everybody was looking in the wrong place. They were taunted, really. I think just as bad that John George was murdered, but then the family were literally taunted. That's completely unnecessary, isn't it? Whatever the reasons behind why John George was murdered, I don't know. We don't know because we haven't had the court case yet. But to taunt a family like that, to leave them in a foreign country searching for their son's body, with all the problems that entails, like the language barrier, etc. Really horrible thing to do, and then reveling in it. So the thing is, there were two suspects in this case. So there is Johnny Smyth and Michael Malley. They were the two main suspects. Michael Malley gave himself up to the police, and in fact it was him who said where John's body was. And John had been brutally murdered. He'd been shot in the face, he'd been stabbed in the leg, he'd been stripped or half stripped and just dumped in a lemon grove in Rocales in Spain. So, it's really brutal. Anyway, Michael Malley, he did give himself up. went to the police, told them where the body was, and he was given bail. So Michael Malley, one of the suspects, he was out on bail. The other suspect, Johnny Smyth, he did a runner. He ran off first of all to Gibraltar, where he married his girlfriend, who I think was 19 at the time, 19 or 20, Madison Allen, who's an OnlyFans model. So he went off and married her in Gibraltar. Then they went on the run and they ended up being arrested. To cut a long story short, they were arrested in Portugal, or he was anyway, and he was extradited to Spain. He was put in prison. He was refused bail because obviously he was a flight risk, or, because he'd already run off once, gone on the run once. So he was in prison in Alicante, but because he'd had the foresight to marry his OnlyFans model wife, Madison, they were getting conjugal visits, because in Spain you get conjugal visits. So that's probably why he married her. Anyway, in the meantime, other things have happened. So while the family, John George's family, patiently waiting for the court case, because as I say, the wheels of justice, they turn slowly in Spain, so there'll be justice. There will definitely be justice, but when, I don't know. We still do not have a date for the trial. Hello, inquiring minds. Hi, thank you for watching. So we still don't have a date for the trial. Anyway, then in the meantime, one of the suspects, Michael Malley, who's a Czechoslovakian national, he was murdered himself, shot in the head several times. A beach location up in Punta Prima near Torrevieja in Spain, and that was supposedly, someone has been arrested, a man from Manchester, a hitman who did that. Now, was Michael Malley disposed of so he could be the fall guy for the murder of John George? Don't know. Then the next thing that happened was Madison Smith, the now wife of Johnny Smyth, she was arrested for possession of a huge amount of drugs and weapons, and she was released on bail. Why was she released on bail? I think it was €40. Since then, she has also probably making a video for TikTok, because she's all over social media, crashed into a car and one man was killed. One man was killed in an accident. So that's like manslaughter, I suppose. She was driving a BMW or something, probably videoing herself. I don't know what she was doing. But anyway, she wasn't paying attention. She was perhaps high as a kite. I don't know. But a man died. So the bodies are stacking up. You've got John George, the original person who was murdered. You've got Michael Malley, one of the suspects, who himself now has been murdered. You've got the man that Madison Allen killed in the car accident. 3 bodies. Then another guy, somewhere in the middle of all this, Dan McMeekin, a guy who knew all the people involved. He was stabbed in the neck outside a bar in La Zenia, in Orihuela Costa. Had to be rushed to hospital, barely escaped with his life. So this is horrible, isn't it? All the violence. Then Madison, Johnny Smith's wife now, the OnlyFans model, a woman who, makes her living on her looks, very attractive woman, girl. I think of her as a girl, but she's not. She is a woman. She's 21 now, I think, or maybe 22. I'm not sure. She was slashed, had her face slashed and disfigured. I don't know how serious it is, but she had a scar right across her, a bit like the Joker type thing. So it's just been one thing after another. And in the meantime, John George's family are sitting back in the background thinking, when's justice going to come for our brother, our son? And they've been trolled a lot. I mean, it's been a very horrible case, to be honest. All the murder cases, of course, they're horrible, but I find it horrible that the attacking of John George's family, people accusing them of all sorts. Well, I don't know them. Maybe they're not, whiter than white. Who is whiter than white? Is there any of us that could sit there and say, oh, no, I've never done anything wrong in my life? You might not have murdered someone, but come on. People, or you or your family, people get involved in things, and as I say, I think anyone who says, oh, that could never happen with my son, or that could never happen with my daughter, or, you just know what might happen in life. So you've got to be careful to judge too harshly. Well, especially when someone, they haven't murdered anybody, for God's sake. So, I don't get all this trolling of victims' families, etc. I just don't understand it. Even if you thought it, why say it when they're going through enough? What does that make you? You have to think, what sort of person does that make you? If you're a person that throws all this hatred out at families of people who have lost loved ones, whether their loved ones were saints or angels or not, what sort of person does it mean you are? Anyway, so that was the situation. So so one suspect is dead. So there's Johnny Smyth is the only suspect remaining. He is back in prison. He was released on bail over Christmas, but he broke the terms of his bail, which I presume are not having any weapons and things like that. He had weapons. Anyway, he's back in prison. And the news, if you like, the reason that I'm on here talking about this case today, the development, is that there's been a breakthrough, a DNA breakthrough in this case. So it just shows you how long DNA can take. So the Guardia Civil, the Spanish police, or the Policía Nacional, I'm not sure which one are dealing with it, they had a car that they were examining, and we're going to listen to someone telling us about it in a moment. And they have found DNA. They found blood in the back of the car, or traces that show that they think that John George was put in the back of that car. The Guardia Civil have always said from the beginning they think that John George was killed the night of the fiestas in the apartment in Orihuela Costa. Now, what that means is when we have fiestas here in Spain, any of you watch my channel regularly, you'll know, especially if you were watching at New Year, there's bangers going off, there's fireworks, and anytime there's like bank holiday or special celebration, and it sounds often like somebody's outside with a bloody pump action shotgun or something, and you sit there and you think, oh, is that fireworks? Hopefully it's fireworks. But I always think, God, one day I'll just sit here and think, oh, it's fireworks, and there'll be somebody out in the street murdering everybody. Because they are so loud. Anyway, so that's what the Guardia or the police have always said. They thought that John George had been murdered in that apartment in Orihuela Costa, and the noise of the fireworks going off had masked the noise, because the neighbors didn't know anything, and the thing is, that area where this apartment was, most of the people that live there in that apartment in the surrounding area will probably not be Spanish, because it's an area where a lot of people live from other countries, and also would probably be pensioners, a lot of them. People who've come here to retire. I don't know why they had that place, really. It was a funny place for young people like that to have an apartment. Anyway, I don't know why. So that's where we were. So what I'm going to show you is this video of Alison Morris, who is a journalist for the Belfast. This Belfast is where John George comes from. She is a reporter for the she's the crime reporter for the I think it's the Belfast Telegraph, I think. Anyway, so we're going to watch. She put a TikTok out explaining the development, and we're going to have a look at that. So this is good news for the family, really, because the thing is, when Michael Malley was murdered, you just felt, you know, that Malley's fought for the conviction of Johnny Smyth. And, you know, there was, I think, this worry that once Michael Malley had been murdered, how would this affect the case against Johnny Smyth? Would he end up not enough evidence to prove he did it? But DNA evidence, can't wriggle out of that one, can you? You know, so DNA evidence, that is, if Michael Malley, you know, as a way of, maybe it was a hit, as a way of sort of deflecting the attention off Johnny Smyth, and of course meaning that he couldn't testify against Johnny. Now, I need to say that Michael Malley was not an angel either, so it may be that Michael Malley was murdered, nothing to do with the John George case. Could be something else. You know, he was up to his neck in drugs, the drugs world, etc. So we don't know that the reason for his, it just seems a coincidence, isn't it? There he is, a prime witness in a murder case, and boom, he ends up being murdered. So we don't know for certain that Michael Malley was murdered because of the John George case, but he was murdered for some reason. You know, he didn't shoot himself in the head a few times. So, yeah. Hi, Daniel. Yeah, happy Tuesday. Thanks for watching. So, you know, there was this consternation when and don't forget, Michael Malley, too, he was a father as well. So I just want to spare a thought for his, you know, for if you don't care about John George, at least care about his boys. Same with Michael Malley, you know, maybe he was a piece of shit, I don't know, but he has a daughter. She's the innocent, she hasn't done anything, so we have to think about them. Okay, so let's have a look at this video. Or a listen. I've got to find the...
Today, family received good news from the Spanish authorities this week that the forensics being carried on a BX5 that had been recovered in Spain. It had no number plates on it, but they were able to trace that car through other means, but it had been undergone forensic examination, and they have been told this week that what they call organic matter, so blood of the dead man, of John George, and therefore they believe that car was used to transport his body. It also said that there was another male DNA profile which had been obtained from that car, which matches what they call the unambiguous DNA profile of the detainee, Michael Malley. So that ties in with that. And then it said swabs taken from the driver's seat and seatbelt matches the unambiguous genetic profile of the detainee, Johnny Smyth. And they said this has been obtained during the preparation of our previous report. So Smyth fled Spain after the murder of John George. He was arrested in Portugal in March 2025. He was extradited back to Spain, and then he was released last year on a bail bond of €100,000. But since his release, he was constantly coming to the attention of the Spanish police and the Spanish media. And in March of this year, he was caught with a number of weapons after he was stopped by police along with his wife, Madison Allen. He had a 9mm Star pistol in a van he was driving, and during a follow-up search in Moorlet near Benidorm, other weapons were discovered.
It's not the sharpest tack, is it? You know, he got his bond. He was released at Christmas, €100,000 he had to put up, or someone had to put up for him. And he was released. You think he'd just keep a low profile, wouldn't you? You'd be lucky that you were released for Christmas. John George's family didn't get a chance to spend that Christmas with John George, and the Christmas before they'd spent searching for his body all over the Costa Blanca. I just can't believe how people are so thick, really, you know. So Johnny Smyth, he could have just kept his head down, but no, he was all over social media with his wife. He was fighting. As Alison just said, he was found with weapons, with drugs. Just even the Spanish judge that put him back in prison said he's just making a mockery of the Spanish justice system. And believe me, the Spanish justice system is lenient towards offenders, I think. Personally, I think they're much too lenient towards offenders. So, you know, he had all those opportunities. And so he's got what he did. He's only got himself to blame for it. He was given every opportunity, you know, to walk free at least until his trial. So, yeah, you know, he just deserves everything he gets, really. But sorry, I'm trying to play it again, and it's not playing now. Great.
The pair police cell before being released, pending further investigation. We know that those weapons are also going under being analysed to see if they've been used in any other crimes. Smith then was up for a bail variation. The family of John George had appealed the fact he'd been released on bail, but then Johnny Smyth himself made a counter application saying he wanted his bail bonds relaxed to allow him to sign on just once a week and for the bond to be reduced to £30,000. However, the judge was shown evidence of social media content uploaded by the couple, who had been very active on various different social media platforms, which appeared to be mocking members of the deceased man's family, including his father, Billy George. The judge called for a short adjournment to review that material, and among the clips was one of Smith boasting that he had been living like a king during his time on remand in Spain. When the judge returned to the court, he said he was returning him to his kingdom, and so he has now been returned back to detention. I believe that the trial is due to start in January next year, January 2027, and the family of John George last night welcomed this breakthrough and said they will continue to campaign for justice for George, with the trial date, as I said, expected to take place in January next year. Hey.
So, there you go. So that's interesting. So she's saying the trial's expected to take place in January next year. So that will have been 3 Christmases that John George's family will have spent without him before the trial even happens. Hi, Admit. Hope you're well. Thank you for watching. So, yeah, that's the latest on this case. Very interesting. You know, I think, you know, just like, I think it's the Spanish justice system, as I say, does work. So that's the situation. That's the situation. DNA found in the car, not only the DNA of John George in the boots, but also the DNA of Johnny Smyth on the seatbelt and the steering wheel. So even though Michael Malley has you know, cannot testify because he's dead because somebody shot him. DNA is difficult to wriggle out of. So whether that, you know, and if Johnny Smyth is found guilty, he's looking at 15 years. You know, Spanish sentences aren't good. You might think sentences aren't very good in your country, but Spain, they're crap. But they take other 15 years, I think, is the minimum. Or is it even the maximum? I don't know. So he's definitely going to get 15 years if he's found guilty. But then they take in other circumstances and things, so it may end up being more than that, of course. Oh, too many hearts, admit. Yeah, you got too much love, So yeah, I didn't know that. But anyway, Nightbot, I can't believe he just popped up there. I haven't seen him for ages. Anyway, so yeah, that's the update that I wanted to give you about the Johnny Smyth case that we've been. It is Johnny Smyth. He's the killer or alleged killer. The John George case that we've been following right from when it first happened. A long time ago now, coming up to 2 years since this man was brutally murdered and his family had to go through all that. So yeah, just sort of let you know about